Hello and welcome back to the 2025 astrology panel. It's Tiani. I'm back in business, baby, and so excited to be here. And welcome back, Kim Fairminer, who came a couple of years ago, but she is back today speaking about a really epic topic that we're very excited about. Thank you so much for joining, Kim.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's a great topic, and I'm really pumped you said yes. That's what I just said just before we jumped on, that I really appreciate Kim saying yes to this topic. No one had covered it yet. So we will get into that shortly. And as usual, please feel free to share questions, comments, all the things in the YouTube or, and message us and all the things because we want to hear how this is affecting you and playing out in your own chart. But firstly, let's ask this question that I've been asking to all of the astrologers. It's so lovely. We're getting some interesting stories. It's so great to see how people's rising sign planet, the ruler of their chart, actually lands for them, how they utilize it, how they experience it. So that is the question, Kim. What is the ruler of your chart and the significance and how it's played out for you in your life, maybe by sign and house, and how is it activated for you? I want to hear all the things.
Okay, so I'm a Pisces rising, and my Jupiter, which I lean towards traditional rulers and love to throw in a bit of sort of ancient traditional astrology into my work. So yeah, Jupiter's my go-to planet. It's in Aries, so people kind of they underestimate me straight away. And it's not only in Aries, it's conjunct Mars. So yeah, there's a little bit of giddy up there, girls.
Yeah, girlfriend.
Yeah. It's square Saturn though, so
Mhm.
sometimes I have to box it up. But yeah, so the way I think of it, it's in my second house, whether you slice it by quadrant or whole signs. So it's about money, but it's also about my spiritual values. So for me, most I guess recurrently, it brings in what I do and who I am in the world and how I'm recognized, like bringing in that 10th house rulership with the ninth house. And when I think about the jobs and what I've done, the jobs I've done, like how I've made my money as an adult, it's, I've worked in the university sector, like the 10th house and the ninth house coming together to make me the money in the second. I've worked for a large multinational defense contractor, creating technical publications for them. So again, like that Martian influence, in publishing, in the sign of war. So yeah, I was an editor with them for a long time.
So
And now
literal.
I'm an
Hey.
astrologer. So
Yeah.
the ninth house with the 10th house. And yeah, that's what I do. And also, yeah, if we were to use the modern ruler of Pisces, I've got Neptune up the top of my chart. So I guess
In your
those
10th? In your
yeah,
10th? Yeah,
yeah,
wow.
pretty
Yep.
much conjunct the midheaven. So
Mm.
it's been, I think, a really sort of intuitive kind of journey. And it has to be, and it's got to excite me. Like a lot of my previous jobs, I didn't mind working for the university, but my time in the corporate world, with the military industrial complex was really just about making myself some money to set myself up. And I guess what I did back then has given me the freedom for a slightly more idealistic path that perhaps doesn't make the money in the same quantities, but
Mm.
it's meant that I haven't had to compromise my values. So I guess I just sucked it up for a while, pulled together some, capital, and, got myself a house and some education. And yeah, now I get to sort of play in more comfortable realms, which is the
Mm.
realm of spirit and meaning and helping people get more of that in their life because it's really, really important. And when you strip all away all the stuff, that's what kind of makes humans tick, what leads us forward to doing great things for our community, creative efforts, looking after people and the world in, a better way. So
There is
yeah.
the big sense of like the big thing with Jupiter being the ruler of the ascendant with Pisces rising, but then also the ruler of the 10th house because it traditionally rules Sag as well. So that's where Kim was referring to the 10th house stuff, right? So there's 10th house stuff, but then also the modern day rule is in the 10th house conjunct the midheaven, and Jupiter being in the second, all around values and what you value. And there is that, I always think of, same with sort of Jupiter in the sixth, there has to be this fulfillment. Like if it's not helping and fulfilling, then there's just this emptiness, especially Neptune in the 10th too, right? Like Neptune in the 10th it's not about them. Yes, like you said, I think that Martian, that Jupiter Mars has got you exactly what you said to get that gain and collateral. But generally it has to be of spirit, of service in some way with both Jupiter and Pisces. So Jupiter and Neptune, sorry, it's a dual rulership with the Pisces rising, right? With the Sag midheaven, if you're going whole sign. So it's quite amazing. I love it completely lines up to everything, with especially Jupiter being in the second and the drive in Aries, like flip. Oh God, you're about to have all this stuff hit Jupiter and Mars. Oh my God,
look, I think for astrology, particularly if you've got like a chart where all your planets are kind of splayed out, there's always something going on. Whereas if you've got like, a little stellium or something, like everything happens all at once in a very short period of time. But like for me, it's just kind of like an ongoing, relentless thing.
Are you a bit more of a splay chart, are you, Kim?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like 8th house stellium. I got nothing in that quadrant of 4th, 5th, and 6th. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a really good, again, description of how knowing the ruler of our chart and where it is, and the dual rulership as well. Remember, there's also dual rulership because we do have traditional and evolutionary astrology, and working with both of the planets can be highly symbolic into where your energy should go, or what you should be focused on, or how you're getting there. It's a lot of the how you're getting there. So I love that story, Kim. That's perfect. Love it. And so today I'm super excited to bring Kim in because we've fundamentally got something which I'm calling the collective foundation of the future. It's the new bones and the new structures and the new systems coming in. As we know, and as I've discussed with many different and amazing astrologers, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, and of course, Pluto in Aquarius. So the four big guns, shifting signs, but they're all talking to each other. And we're coming from this very yin, feminine, earth, water, receptive, soft, fluid, and gentle, to yang, fire, dominant, air. Do not fuck with what's going to happen. It is going to change, and it's going to be very visceral. And this little, complex little, it's all very harmonious. Don't get me wrong. Saturn and Neptune in Aries is the apex of what's called perhaps a mini grand trine or a talent triangle, just throwing those out there. But Uranus is trine Pluto, Gemini, and Aquarius, and then both looking to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So both all fire and air signs. So it's quite a, collective foundation. It's new bones, it's new structures, it's very busy, and again, it's very, very different to a yin, feminine earth and water over to this. And so I really am happy that Kim can be here and really unpack this set of situations and circumstances and aspects for us all today. And we both have already said that we've got Saturn square Mercury today as we're recording this, and
Moon Neptune.
So, excuse us. This is just, we have to come to you in the current climate. But yeah, I look forward to unpacking this with you this morning, Kim. So let's unravel, darling, unravel this incredible.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm going to hit you with some nerdy stuff straight up, and then I'm going to talk through how it feels, and then like circle back to kind of the nerdy stuff. Yeah. So what I'm focusing in on today are the sextiles between Saturn and Uranus and Neptune. And then we've got Pluto in the wings kind of connecting up as well. So like these are big outer planets. This is strong collective energy. And as Tiani's already said, like the major shift, like that first port of call, is that we're going from feminine signs to masculine signs. So everything has kind of been I wouldn't say hidden as such, but just kind of on the low, like maybe like, in more private spaces, is going to come kind of rushing out, and you're going to go, what? Like, that's what they really thought. it's going to be kind of like from quiet energy to loud energy. So all those kind of polarity words. So polarity influences what happens, like the event speed and an orientation. So life is going to feel like it speeds up. It's going to seem louder. It's just going to go like, it's got to keep up energy to it. So it's going to be important to kind of like manage this shift like at a personal level, because any kind of change is can be stressful. So whether it's good change or not so good change, like change is change, and we all have degrees of resistance to it, and we might just want to go, oh, back to the old days. So I see 2025 with these sextile alignments in particular, because they happen in feminine signs and in masculine signs in a bit of a cha-cha-cha and then a back out. So in the start of the year, our first kind of connection that's exact, like, but all these, I think, you mentioned the pre-chat, Tiani, that they're all very close together. They're all within orb all the time. So we are like in the oceanic realm, like of this, and these planets are like, when the planets perfect, they're like alignments that are going to like smack you. Hopefully not knock you over, like keep one eye on those waves. Otherwise, you end up dumped. Nobody likes being dumped. I remember the last time it happened to me. Incredibly disorienting. So this is why we do
We're
astrology.
too old for that now, though. We're just too old.
I'm
too old to get dumped in the ocean. Give me a break.
And like sand and upside down and like, woo.
Yeah, I'm that rolling person once I get dumped. No, it's not a good sight. Yeah.
It's a fun time.
Yeah.
There's our moon Neptune moment.
Exactly. Yeah. The rolling in the ocean. Yeah.
So in 2025, the first wave, the first peak is Saturn sextile Uranus. And this happens across the Pisces, Taurus, in Pisces and Taurus. So they're both feminine signs. It happens quite like, well back in the third decan of those signs at, 24, 25. So that will be kind of familiar. Like it's known. August is when it all happens, because we get Saturn retrograde sextile Uranus in the first couple of degrees of Aries and Gemini. And this is the first visit of Saturn in Aries. So it's got like a bit of wake up, like wake up, shake up energy. And also in August, we've got the second pair of planets also active, with Uranus at the same time will be sextile retrograde Neptune. That's happening Gemini to Aries as well. So like it's on. So August is like a peak of the year, in my opinion. And then things kind of simmer back down. Maybe in November, when Uranus and Neptune are both retrograde and they make a sextile in the anaretic degree, the very last degrees of Taurus and Pisces. So we kind of got like a bit of a bookend with a feminine sextile, the double sextile in August in masculine signs, followed by the feminine sextile. So the first half of the year is, well, maybe that's the middle of the year more, April and August, dominated by Saturn sextile Uranus. And then in the second half of the year, Uranus sextile Neptune kind of takes over. And then 2026, Pluto goes, hey, I'm going to join the party. I'm like here. He's been kind of lurking off to the edge, and then he gets involved. So this really is a rolling story that rises in 2025. And the party really pumps in 2026. Yeah.
I think 2025 is definitely, it's very much it's a very big cathartic, maybe crisis preview to 2026, because we're getting all the edgings. We're getting this is going to change, and here's a bit of it, but we also have to come back. So it's what Pluto's been doing for, the last 18 months to 2 years or whatever, just back and forth, showing you, coming back, what's unfinished. And I like how you've worded that too, with the first sextile being in the feminine, and then we get the masculine, and then we get the feminine again. So that's really great, because we'll feel the differences there.
Yeah, I think if you kind of like tune in and go, oh, like this is this is the shift, and this is why I feel perhaps a bit discombobulated, or why I feel a bit wide, or bold and want to do things, and then it's like, oh geez, is this such a good idea? And you kind of retreat a bit back. But this is what these outer planets do. They move forward for 60% of the year, and then for the other 40 they're a bit back. I'll think about that some more.
That's right.
So it's transitional. So what I want to kind of do now is take each transition from the feminine sign to the masculine sign and sort of compare and contrast, and then bring it all back together. So Saturn, the planet of structure, realism, conservation, sometimes also conservative, and control. So we've got these ideas of structures there. And in Pisces, where it's been since 2023, we've kind of, the things I've observed are the resurgence of traditional beliefs. The mood's a bit kind of somber. It's not party vibes right now. Certainly not for Pisces risings. I am not partying. There's also a sense of spiritual discipline and perhaps restraint, and testing the boundaries. Pisces is a bit slippery. Saturn loves boundaries. So there's some kind of testing out exactly where our edges are individually and collectively. When we move into Saturn in Aries, the rules, Saturn loves a good rule, doesn't it? These rules are going to be asserted, Aries style. You're not going to be left wondering. If somebody treads on your toe, you'd be like, ow. That external expression is very, of the masculine polarity. I also think that there's going to be kind of a bit more militant control and the idea of discipline. I've got those Aries planets, so I'm pretty familiar with Aries, and you just kind of get a bit rigid. But if you get rigid and have these processes, you can actually achieve more. You can get more from less. So that it has potential there. Obviously, you can go too far, and Saturn is one of the planets of extremes. So just as perhaps some people have gone too far with their traditional beliefs with Saturn in Pisces, it can happen in Aries in a different way. And of course, traditionally Saturn is in fall. So there's this weird kind of twist potential with Saturn in Aries. So being really mindful that you can go to that extreme energy, a malefic planet in a malefic ruled sign. Okay. So, but also on the upside, I think Saturn likes to operate solo. So this idea of championing the individual is likely to rise up. But on the flip side, while you get leaders there, people that are willing to, plant a flag and go, this is what I stand for, there's also the potential for people to feel really lonely and isolated with Saturn in Aries. So, I mean, like any transit, there's good expressions and bad expressions, but yeah, they're just kind of the edges that we're going to be rubbing up against. So it's a shift from self-sacrificing to self-centered, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Often we get thrown out, don't be selfish. I'm sometimes it's really good to be selfish. Yeah, so I don't think being selfish is necessarily a bad thing. It's just an approach. There's also a shift from relying on everyone to a more individual reliance, particularly for personal, materials and resources. So I'm also anticipating a restructuring of the care economy, with the big baby boomer demographic shift affecting health and aged care, which has kind of happened with Saturn in Pisces. I dabble in mundane astrology sometimes too. So that's a bit of a shift there. So there's these people still need to be cared for, but there's an expectation because baby boomers have so much and
the monopoly.
That generation after them perhaps have a little bit less that they need to give a little bit to get the care. So the old ways don't offer the same comfort and escape because Saturn does that dance between Aries and Pisces, but I think we'll still keep trying to find that old feminine comfort when we're entering a brave new world. So yeah, that's a bit of the themes that I'm picking up for Saturn's shift from Pisces into Aries.
Mm.
Then we've also got Uranus moving from Taurus to Gemini. Uranus is kind of Saturn's nemesis. Mythologically, they've got some baggage between each other. Uranus favors nonconformity, whereas obviously Saturn is the old ways. Uranus is freedom, it's idealism, it's reform. And in Taurus, it brings instability and change, because change changes things. Yeah. So there's been changes in our environment, a lot of sort of instability with what's happening with the climate, and natural resources and the distribution of resources and how that relates to economic unrest. There's also I've written here the body as an idea. So like new concepts of what it means to be in your body. And more positively, with that is advances in sustainability, which kind of is a way of addressing the environmental instability and things that have happened there. So there's this real focus on stuff like tangible earth, like the body, the meat. When we move into Gemini, we're going from earth into air. So the instability that Uranus brings is applied to ideas. And rather than sort of, freedom of access to resources, it's an intellectual freedom that Uranus seeks. Yeah. There's going to be massive advances in communication and transportation. And because we haven't been able to rely on the weather, business as usual in Uranus and Taurus years, Uranus and Gemini, we're not going to be able to rely on anything we read. Information is just going to be really questionable. And yeah, that's going to be, I think, difficult to negotiate. So we've got the shift from Earth, the physical and financial, to air ideas and the social realm. There's going to be unstable ideas, gossip, rumors, lies, just straight up, just like all sorts of mad shit. Information will be sent, shared, and exchanged, also likely bought and sold, because we don't kind of forget about Uranus and Taurus. So there's this idea of commodity. Also, Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign, because you've got the idea of commerce. The Merc bit in commerce relates to Mercury. So Gemini is a bit amoral too. So like this information being like circulated and distributed is likely to be done outside of the rules. And there's going to be like copyright and IP breaches. There's already those conversations happening with AI. I think disembodiment, the contrast between Earth of Taurus, air of Gemini, we get out of the body and so into the head. So I think it's, at a personal level, taking the lessons, the things that we've experienced during those Uranus in Taurus years and bringing them forward, not just kind of like forgetting about them because they're old. Gemini can be a bit like, what's fun? What's novel? And I say this as a Gemini.
She's allowed to say this.
Yes. Yeah. I've got license.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
just my own sign.
Yeah. Well, I do too. I've got Mercury in Gemini, so I can say all the things too, because Hermes, I am Hermes. So yeah.
Yeah.
You're Mercury in Gemini too, yeah?
Yeah. Retrograde.
Oh, right. Okay. Mine's not retrograde. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
And yeah, just one last point. I really think that by the end of Uranus in Gemini, that electric cars will be mainstream. I think that they'll just be like everywhere, because Uranus is quite electrical, and we're having this whole like rewiring of the network, the kind of like the bones, while Uranus is in Taurus. And then, well, how do we move around? And yeah, it's electrification in a different realm. So along with, so we've got Saturn moving from Pisces to Aries. We've also got Neptune moving from Pisces to Aries. Yeah, I wonder if I'm going to be sad to see them move on out of my first house into my second. I suspect not. Excuse me with the water bottle. All right, so Neptune is the planet of imagination, disintegration, glamour, illusion, deception. They're just a few of my favorite keywords. In Pisces, Neptune's transit through Pisces has brought collective delusions, mass hysteria, and like sweeping trends. We just kind of get on these things for a ride and then they peter out, they disappear, go up in mist. With Neptune moving into Aries, I'm thinking some religious conflict. Aries is a sign of conflict and assertion. So, like, different religious factions are likely to go, you don't like us, blah, blah, blah. Also, the potential for spiritual leaders to emerge. And I think that's really hopeful, because there's going to probably be idealistic battles. So again, I think we've got this idea of self-sacrificing. Neptune in Pisces as the modern ruler, they've got, a fairly compatible, agenda. Neptune in Aries, there's a little bit more of a conflict, to use an Aries word. Like, it's not as comfortable. Like, Aries is a bit more of an abrasive sign. It gets things done. So that idea of self-sacrificing to self-centered, it's like, what about me? What do I believe? So religion and other belief systems are likely to get louder, yellier, and more combative. I also think that while we've had these like waves of the collective delusions, mass hysteria, and those sweeping trends, that kind of energy will become more targeted in Aries. It'll be like, and maybe that's like, targeting through social media, or like a more kind of like, this is what we're going to do, and more kind of ruthlessness to get that message to particular people. So this idea to conquer, win, and dominate, but like in really kind of a bit Neptunian shady ways. Everybody is going to need more time alone, for self-reflection, to get back into themselves, to spiritually recharge. Like, there's a lot of this kind of collective energy that we're all just kind of soaking in. And when Neptune moves into Aries, we're going to be like, oh, is that me? It's like that old kind of experience of the empath. Like, is this something I'm feeling, or is this all collective stuff? So asking yourself that question will become more important, as will be unplugging from those mass collective spaces and just like bringing it all back to the self. And this is what I mean about being selfish isn't really being selfish, it's being smart. And I think too, there'll be increased relevance of what's called in some circles UPG, unverified personal gnosis. So an individual transpersonal encounters. So like, everybody has the opportunity to connect very directly with their own idea of God, or spirit, or like whatever you conceive it to be. Like, you get to choose your own word, and you can share that with people, but really it is just for you. So like, these are the kind of big broad brush strokes of what those sign shifts. And remember, we go forwards and we go backwards, so it's a little bit of a dance between those the masculine and feminine expressions of those planets. I delved into Everton, one of my favorite books, the something of stellar influences. He really kind of
the something
from the
20th
century, like so niche, but like, it's really good when you're like having to combine these two planets, and you're like, well, what happens when we put these two planets in the same bottle and shake them up? And of Saturn and Uranus, he mentions irritability and inhibition and tension. So like, the commonality that had, with the second combination, Uranus and Neptune, which he spoke of, elimination of the waking consciousness. I was looking through like the significations he sort of came up with. And for Saturn Uranus, he said inhibition of rhythm, unrhythmical processes. And of Uranus and Neptune, he wrote paralysis of rhythmical processes. And when you think of like rhythmical processes, you think of your heartbeat, you think of the cycles of the year. Like, so I think some really kind of weird and surprising stuff is going to be like, thrust in our faces, in 2025. And we'll be sort of pressed to do something about it in 2026. So I think change and like what that takes is going to be like the new normal. Sorry to come out with such a terrible cliche. Um,
No.
yeah, but I also think with this interruption of business as usual, there's this
Mm.
incredible opportunity for us to awaken at a spirit and soul level, that idea of like, well, what is meaningful and what's just, performative. And there will be performative kind of bullshit out there, like plenty of it too. So
Mm.
that idea of being selfish and what resonates for me,
Mm.
yeah, is going to be critical. Um,
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
think that stuff's, petering in now. I mean, you're seeing things like authenticity. I mean, I literally just shared it on Instagram stories. It was like someone had said authenticity is like will be the only form of currency from here on in. I'm like, it's only ever been authenticity. You know what I mean? Like people are
yeah, yeah.
jumping on these bandwagons now, and we're going to see more of it performatively. That is a perfect word for it, Kim, because I was actually listening to Rich Roll talk about this on the Know Thyself podcast. If you haven't listened to that, fucking, it's an amazing podcast. With Rich Roll, love Rich Roll. But he was talking about the same sort of thing. So people are now getting on going, for me to get good at business or get followers or whatever, I need to be performative in my authenticity and sovereignty, which means I'm going to show up, and whether it's swearing when I don't usually swear, crying on film so that you can see how vulnerable I am. I don't know, it's this really unusual and awkward way that I watch and just go, what the actual fuck? I have muted a whole lot of accounts. Like I might be still following them, but there is a ton muted. I'm not seeing that shit anymore because it's again performative. And so we're going to see that definitely heighten, but also, with everything you're saying, which has been amazing. I've got some other points that I want to reflect back on with you from what you've said, but also these aspects that are happening are harmonious. They are actually harmonious
Yeah.
as well. We're not looking at a Saturn square Uranus. We're looking at Saturn sextile Uranus. We're not looking at Neptune square Uranus, Neptune sextile. And again, with the Pluto, trining Uranus as well, hanging out there. So these are supportive, and this is a brand new way of being. And it is this new sense of enlightenment, but real enlightenment. And I love that stuff you just talked about the gnosis. And yeah, like who are you within that matrix? Like, and finally, some veils lifting around that instead of being in that, Pisces delusional soup that so many have been. Not only some of us can swim in that because we know who we are. Most people drown in it because they don't know who they are. So this is where hopefully this is the acceleration of, yeah, like just me being who I am is enough. I don't have to perform. I don't have to pretend. I can just show up in that. And all of this feels like it's stirring that, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really important thing to note. Like I've written some dot points. Like these are trines and sextiles that we're coming into. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an uncomfortable experience, but I think sometimes we can get, if you get too comfortable and you lack that awareness, you can become complacent. So like it's that lack of awareness that can get you into trouble. It's like a bit like when you're kind of swimming and then before you know it, like, like those ocean currents, they can like pull you and then you're like, shit, this isn't where I want to be. There must be a rip here. And like, it's important you notice that current early. Otherwise you can be, swept out where you don't want to be and without kind of noticing. So sextiles and trines bring ease, but it's still, Saturn's still involved. So that idea of discernment and, personal boundaries are important. I think it's really great the example you used about like muting people on your feed, being aware of what information you consume and that you want to take into your being. Because again, that Neptune is like that permeable. The self is permeable, and recognizing that helps you be authentic, because we only use like this tiny portion of our brain, and there's all these like highly developed psychological and marketing techniques, that Saturn and Neptune in Aries is going to like really kind of go for that hyper targeted information with all the extra data that we've had collected on all of us, like what we're clicking on, what we're slowing down as we scroll, like GPS things tracking our phone, like it's a whole thing.
Exactly.
So they've got a picture of us that we're probably not even aware of, and I think some of that idea of social surveillance brings in the Pluto Aquarius stuff. So yeah, and again, with that Pluto and Aquarius coming in to those sextiles a little later, you can, like, there is the risk of getting swept up in that collective group think. Like, and if you are feeling lonely because of Saturn in Aries and isolated, that idea of silo, you do want to belong. We are social creatures, but you shouldn't have to compromise who you are to be part of that collective.
I
Yeah, and
always say, and I always sort of refer to the lion in this situation, and maybe it's because I've got a Leo North Node. So I'm just like, that collective. I would never ever sacrifice who I am and my authenticity to be a part of a group. Now, some people like carry on with like, oh, this person's amazing, or this modality is amazing, and I'll be like, nah. Like, and yes, every single person's saying it, but if it doesn't land for me, I'm not buying in because the collective group think. And again, hello, my south node in Uranus, but I mean in Aquarius, but at the same time I do have my north node in the 11th house, so it's a lovely complex. But it's the lion, right? Like the lion doesn't need to go around telling the herd and telling everyone in fucking Africa that he's a lion. He just is that. And this is this again coming back to the sovereignty of the self and not being exactly what you said in that group think, because realistically, everyone's idea of Pluto into Aquarius and kumbayaing and humanitarian, they're fucking delusional to think that that's going to happen. Like, you think that living on a commune and doing all that stuff, look, if that resonates with you, awesome, do that. Like, if that's what moving into the future means for you, that's going to be financially feasible, I'm all for that. I mean, that makes me want to spew. But the thing is that this collective consciousness isn't like, oh, it's all love and light. Pluto takes no prisoners, and in such a black and white sign. Trust me, Pluto in Capricorn has been like the lube. Pluto in Aquarius is much harsher than Pluto in Capricorn. So this isn't, yes, there's going to be incredible things that come from it, just like there has been from Pluto in Capricorn, but this isn't, oh, now we're all in love and humanity's all going to come together. It's like, if anything, there's going to be much more separation, much more isolation, and much more division. But how are you within yourself? And something that you said at the beginning, which I am all for, is the micro, is the personal. Navigating such big collective shifts like this, like Kim said, really focus on your space in that, because that's actually going to be what keeps you fucking sane. And especially all the Uranus stuff you said with Gemini, like, holy hell, babe, I like wrote all these notes down. I haven't done my Uranus and Gemini chat with my astrology yet for the panel, but this is like next level stuff, like what you're talking about here too. And to have this, configuring with Pluto and Saturn and Neptune, like there is a whole world that we don't know about, and we're all about to be thrust into it. And if you're not solid in yourself, and again, so wishy in, oh, this trend and this trend and this trend, I mean, it's going to be a very busy, unstable time for you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, while you want to, like, your personal environment and, like, the integrity of your mind and your body and your personal space and what you choose to let into that, that's your responsibility.
It
like,
is.
Yeah, there's people pushing against that, like in, all directions, but it's you that has to go, no, push it away, turn the Wi-Fi off, like, I don't know, take up painting or read a book.
Fuck, I'm desperate to read a book. My coffee shop lady was just like, I go to bed and drink tea and read books. And I'm like, I remember those days when I wasn't playing some random game an hour before I went to bed. Like, I'm like, I want to read more books,
Yeah. And I guess that's a bit of perhaps the traditional beliefs, like maybe you can like lean a bit on that while Saturn is still in Pisces, like the old ways, like the cutesy old ways.
Yes.
It's quaint, it's fun.
It is.
Yeah, but like it preserves something within us that is part of us and deserves to be protected as well.
Definitely.
I think with that idea of personal integrity, I think that can like that personal containment and the priorities of the self, like that's important, but it's also important not to take that too far, and
Yeah,
particularly with Pluto bringing that idea of the extreme, and Saturn as
true.
well, it's a bit
Yeah.
extreme, and
Mm.
like that Aries tendency to fight the other. Um, there's that, so like there's this kind of need to balance like taking sides, and yeah, it's really kind of like delicate, so but thinking it through, and I think Pluto in Aquarius will help that, that idea of like intellectual rigor and thinking it through deeply. Well, what's going on here, like not just skimming the surface, which is going to be that Gemini energy coming through. Like Pluto's like, right, you need to really think about this and what it means for you
Mm.
personally.
And
And
I love
mm,
when you said, sorry, I want you to keep going, but I love when you said about like, Uranus is electric, it's lightning, right? Like I think Edison was an Aquarian. Like, I mean, you can't make this shit up when someone who invented fucking electricity is an Aquarian, right? Like this is why Aquarius is co-ruled by Uranus, right? Because Uranus is, I haven't gone down the Prometheus track, but I mean, I know Urania, Urania, like he's the god of the world, but we're rewiring, and that's exactly what we're doing. The whole body stuff with Taurus, Jupiter was in Taurus there at this time as well. So we've been asked to metabolize life, to slow down, to feel our bodies. And if you've done a great job at that, fucking high five. I'm a Taurus stellium, so yes, I have. But at the same time, like now when Uranus shifts into Gemini, this rewiring of the mind and the synapses and the thoughts. And I just automatically think of Lucy, which is one of my favorite movies. And I often think I am Lucy because I am, and we all are, and we all have that capacity to be Lucy. If you haven't watched Lucy, go and watch it because this is very Uranus in Gemini. This is very Uranus in Taurus, is understanding the body and the relationship to energy and the relationship to that. Our brains are at this small of a capacity, but where there is so much more. And yes, whilst Elon, hate him or love Musk, he's a true futurist. Mars in Aquarius, North Node in Aquarius. Hate him if you want. This is a true futurist. I know he's a billionaire and all the things, but I'm talking astrologically. We have to be biased when we're talking astrologically. This isn't, we're not trying to say we like or don't like someone. But the thing is that this is, the future of what, he's wanting to put chips in to, do all these things to the brain and all these things. But we, with all of this that you've just talked about, with this beautiful talent triangle, whatever we want to call it, mini grand trine, these things are the transpersonal planets. You want to accelerate your brain and use it, trust your intuition. You want to do that, use sound healing, copper, crystals. All these things are going to be brought back now into the forefront as well. As much as new technology is going to be amazing, we're also, again, going back to what you talked about, the preservation of what is old, inherited, and quaint, which is just, working with crystals again, working with flowers, working with teas, working with herbs. Like if you're not already doing that, which I mean, I'm assuming you might be, but I definitely have been my whole life. So, these things aren't new to me. This isn't like, oh, wow, copper, sound healing. Hello. How do you think an MRI happens? It's fucking sound, right? Like it's sound waves. Are you kidding me? Like it's all ancient technology, but you yourself have the capacity to plug into something amazing. Like this energy is accelerated with these aspects. Like it is accelerated, and we don't have to just rely on AI to write stuff, which I'm watching so many people do, and it's really gross. But the thing is like you said, once Uranus is fully in Gemini and this starts to happen, it will be hard to be able to tell because it is mimicking. We're talking about the mimics and the lies and the deception. And Neptune might move out of Pisces where it is a very glamour magic soup, but Uranus is about to move into the trickster territory of Gemini for 7 motherfucking years. So it's just going to be like next
yeah,
level in a way, right?
yeah,
Like my mind is
yeah,
just like
the
grenades.
acceleration of
Mm,
technology and information generation and distribution is just going to be like, I don't know, being in one of those like light tunnels where things are just flying
mm,
past, like, and there will be like a devolution in those hands-on skills, like crystal healing, like writing, like
mm.
yeah, and like things like empathy and like the human touch, like that will, for certain portions of the population, it will fall away. I don't want that to fall away for me. So that's something I'm like looking to find a balance between. Like, I don't want to resist the technology,
No,
but I
no.
want to integrate it into my life in a balanced and authentic way.
Exactly.
Um,
That's
I
some
also
really,
think
really
like,
great points, Kim.
yeah,
Yeah.
that what's happening now is akin to like the printing press and also the witch craze that happened. I think it was like around 1400 when the printing press was invented, and then in that 100 years we had the Renaissance around like 1500. So,
Hmm.
like, while there's this kind of negative side, like the witch craze was not a fun time for a lot of people, but that dissemination of information about witchcraft in the form of like, printed pages, like it put this new idea in the hands of people that weren't kind of familiar with it, and they all went a bit loopy. As a
Mm.
community. And it moved through like the European continent. It was mad. So that kind of stuff could happen, and you probably don't want to be the witch hunter. So be cautious. Um, and organize community, think for yourself, and beware of that collective madness, because your government's probably not going to save you. It didn't save you back then. It infiltrated those governments and those hierarchies. So there is this idea of large scale social change and spiritual upheaval. And with those competing ideas, like everybody knows everything. Everybody can write a book using AI.
Mm.
Um, so that brings tension and the possibility of conflict, but also this amazing sense of creativity and discovery as well. So we need to kind of choose where we want to position ourselves. Like, every single person needs to ask themselves, like, where will you choose to position yourself during this massive dynamic shift in history? So
Mm.
yeah, wild times,
Mm.
kiddos. Hmm.
Yeah, those that the bones are rattling. I can feel the rattle, like, and it's, like we've said too, like these are genuinely positive, supportive aspects that are happening with these transpersonal planets, including Saturn. But at the same time, like it's Earth breaking. Like we're really moving into fundamentally different dimensional shifts, quantum reality, all these sorts of things. I mean, for some of us, this has been our life for 20 years. So this is sort of just like, even as an astrologer, it's like, this is froth territory for us, like it's just frothing. Let's just keep fucking going. And you talking about the Renaissance too, but remember too, as we entered the 2020s, we had that conjunction, in Capricorn with Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, the north, the south node, right? So we had that, which happened the last time in the Dark Ages and the Renaissance. So we are in our new Renaissance, and so these things that Kim's been talking about are that sort of, but we're in the eye of the cosmic needle at the moment. Like 2025 is the halftime show of 2020 to 2030, and it's amping up. Like it's amping up, and yeah, yes, just so much of what you said there is just really anchored in and really anchored in this incredible aspects that we're going to be dancing with next year for on and off, in and out, and really, like you said, the cha-cha-cha. I liked that, because we move forward,
Yeah.
we move back, we move forward, we move
Yeah,
back.
dance with it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
So,
really, yeah,
yeah. I think like just to like you don't have to eat the whole elephant all at once. Like,
yes,
just take a bite here and there.
true.
So this rising energy to the middle of 2025, and it's Saturn Uranus. So you can just focus on that. August is like amazeballs. Um, and then in that second half of the year, Uranus, Neptune takes over. And then, like, if you kind of like ease your way in, like, planetary pair by planetary pair, then you'll be like really well positioned for when Pluto joins that party in 2026. It's all kind of like, happening. And 2025 is, a good time to, wade in slowly, adjust to the change in temperature, and we're all going to be fine.
Oh, we will. We're alive. We will. We're all riding it together. But yes, I'd like that. Don't eat the elephant all at once. It's a really Yeah, there's excitement and anticipation because it's new, it's fresh. It really is this collective foundation of the future. I think these big shifts all at once. So I just want to thank you so much for articulating this so well and covering so much terrain in this short amount of time as well, Kim. As only a Mercury Gemini, we're only Mercury and Geminis know how to cover the terrain and get lots of words in. But I really appreciate your anchoring into this transit, and hopefully, yeah, everyone can just eat parts of the elephant, or just don't eat the elephant because it's a poor elephant, but just take little chunks out of the bits and bobs here. And again, a big part of this for you in your own chart, everyone, is to be really looking at the 0 to 3 degrees of the fire and air houses, and if you've got any planets there as well. Also in cardinal signs, we're looking at, if you've got planets from 0 to 3, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, because again, they're about to get either a conjunction or an opposition or a square. Same with us fixed signs. It's still fucking coming at us. Pluto's now in Aquarius for 20 years, so that's happening. And then of course, mutable too. So no one's left out next year. No one is
We
left
all
out.
get to play.
Everyone gets to play. Yeah, and so also those mutable signs are because Uranus will move from 0 to 1 degree, so of Gemini. So again, looking at Gemini, Sag. So all signs actually, but they're the little hotspot zones. Is that 0 to 3 of fire and air. So really looking at that, because that's going to be exactly where, like, nutting that out in your own chart to see the where this is happening for you. And again, sort of maybe taking that advice, I think, too, that Kim talked about too, is just really, coming back to you and what choices you're making. And I think what I really did love when you talked about sort of this falling away of maybe touch and empathy, which I think we're already seeing, to be completely honest, and especially with children, because everything's so on a screen, they're forgetting that child is actually someone's, like, has a mother and a father who love that child. There's a real disconnect from that, and it really upsets me. And I can't talk about it because I'll just cry, because it's a real thing that's happening at the moment in schools, in schoolyards, and bullying. And it's something that I will stand up, and if that's my flag, my Aries flag, that's what I'll be doing, because these lives are precious, and we need to be teaching our children that human lives, no matter what, are fragile and precious, and parents love these children. They are everything to them, no matter what you think at school or no matter what's online. So there is that already falling away, and it is really important for us as adults and as parents to be really holding that space for our children too, so that doesn't fall away for them, so that they don't just think this is just normal, like, reality for that, all of the things. So yeah, I think that's a big heart. It's a big heart thing for me there, because I just feel that so tremendously, and I'm feeling that so big, and I'm really witnessing that at the moment in life, and it's a big one. So coming back to that micro and what's important to you, and your kin, your family, your whānau, like that. Where are you putting your energy? Because life is super super fragile. It's just, that's what it is. It's super fragile. So really tend to yourselves wisely during these times, and watch getting swept up in the collective mania, because trust us, it's going to happen. It already is, but it's going to get more intense. I think that's the key over the next couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, like, if as many of us become aware of the strings perhaps that are being pulled by various, like, disembodied organizations for nefarious means, or like for profit, greed, like, some agenda that doesn't necessarily align with who we are. If we know who we are, we just say no thank you, and everybody just opts out, and then they're left. So it's only when we, like, buy in to what they're selling and what they tell us we should be interested in. But if we, like, use the tools, cups of tea, just grand for having a quiet moment with yourself, and just sort of checking in, like, without your phone, because yeah, it does change your brain, and your brain is part of your body, like, it animates the old meat sack. So, like, it has a direct influence on what you do, and you want to make sure that you're okay, that your family's okay, your community is okay, and that is through, like, that direct human contact. As you say, we are soft little mushy creatures. I've been running with this metaphor recently. For me to look after my body, I think of it as wants like a small, cute little furry pet. And I'm like, well, what do you need? Oh, you need a hug. You need a little, you need to sleep. Oh, you need a little treat. That's okay, a little belly rub. So I try to like look after myself like a really beloved pet. Yeah, because I am a small little creature in a big wide world at one level. Yeah, we're fierce and bold and we can change the world, but we need to feel loved and cared for and connected to ourselves. And yeah, that's I don't know, the position I'm running with as we move into this uncharted territory.
Yeah, exactly what it is. And especially remembering if you've got some really good practices and rituals and these sorts of things, tending yourself like a small cat, whatever that needs to be, at the end of the day, moving from the earth and water to the fire and air is dichotomy. It's a dichotomy. It's a paradox. It's very, very different. So if there's too much of a disconnect now that, there's so much movement that's going to come. We think of fire, it moves things. We think of air fuels fire. Like this is fast-paced stuff. This is very quick energy. So relish in this now and make sure you've got those digestible, metabolized practices of how you live life in those slow moments, because things are about to get fast.
Indeed.
Oh, so fast. Well, thank you
Buckle
so
up.
much, Kim. Absolutely. It's such an enthralling conversation with you. I always love having you on. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your advice and your tips and your tools and everything that you've just given us in this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me on to share it's helped me piece it together by going through it and looking at it kind of step by step. Yeah, it doesn't have to overwhelm. Yeah, it's going to be loud and fast, but knowing that you can prepare.
Absolutely, which is what the panel's here for. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. Of course, all of Kim's details will be in all of the notes, and I look forward to seeing you at another panel, and journey well, Kim. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening.